Hey everyone, Kieran Chief here, and today I ventured forth into the heart of another dimension to talk about sphere doomers, specifically the alleged different form they had long ago, and what exactly it could be. Now some of you might be thinking, this alleged different form was only mentioned in the most recent Kirby game, and we know little to nothing about what it is. And you would be right, but I feel like Hal has already left us enough clues in order for us to come to a fairly solid guess as to what it is. And what exactly do I believe this alleged true form is? Well, I'll give you some clues. It's a character that we've already seen before, one who is shrouded in mystery and when discussed with others can lead to fairly heated debates, that character being Void Termina. So let me explain exactly how I came to this conclusion. First, let's look at the design of the Doomers. They all seem to have glowing eyes, along with bodies made of energy flowing throughout it, which is very similar to that of Void's, the only real exception being the fact that Void's eyes are black and are tinted with separate colors. There's also the fact that when a Doomer is defeated, they'll occasionally explode, causing their energy-like bodies to burst out into seemingly liquid-like drops, similar to how mini Voids are defeated when Void Soul summons it in their boss fight. Another connection between Sphere Doomer's original form and that of Void's is that apparently Doomers had the ability to warp space and time with this original form, and what do we see when Highness finishes the Jamba Heart in Star Allies? Void Termina creates a portal through space and time to fight Kirby in another dimension. Now, if the only thing these two had in common was their appearances and small similarity in creating portals in space and time, which surprisingly is very common in Kirby characters, I probably wouldn't be making this video, but there's something else that's far more interesting that links these two characters together, that being their connections with energy. For a quick refresher as to how Void works, Void is an omnipresent being that lies dormant inside a crystallized heart known as the Jamba Heart, in which it gathers energy from its surroundings so it can create a physical form based on the gathered energy and break free from its crystallized heart. Void's physical form can also be altered after it's freed, as shown by it mimicking Kirby's face and voice in Star Allies. The reason why I'm stating this info is because it's quite similar to that of Doomers. Let me explain how. Something that is special to both Sphere Doomers and the Grand Doomer when compared to the other Doomers is their wings. Yes, Doomers like Darpa and Dippa have wings, but their appearance is far different from that of the Sphere Doomers. Additionally, the shape of these wings are very similar to that of Fecto-Elphilis's ears, so it's entirely possible that once the Doomers obtain the ship parts that have been imbued by Fecto-Elphilis's energy, the Doomers became influenced by it, causing their physical appearance to change. Now there's something I would like to mention before we move on to my next talking point, that being Crown Doomer and Greater Doomer, since they also possess the Elphilis-like wings. Firstly, Crown Doomer. There's actually two explanations for this one. The first being the fact that since it's just Grand Doomer corrupted by the Master Crown, it's entirely possible that it kept its wings after it absorbed some of the energy from the mast of the Lore Starcutter. The other explanation being that since the Master Crown is also tied into Elphilis, it could just be regaining the wings from that. As for Greater Doomer, this one's a bit more speculative, since if we're going off of my theory, its form would need to be based on the dark energy it had gathered and is currently residing inside of it. The only answer as to how I can imagine Greater Doomer got these wings is that the dark energy that it had gathered is the same dark energy that Forgo uses to possess enemies in Forgotten Land, but that answer feels like quite the stretch. Anyways, now that we've determined that there's a pretty good chance that Sphere Doomers and Void Termina are related to each other, there's just one last question that needs to be answered. How did Sphere Doomers come into existence? Luckily, I think I might have a plausible theory on this. Going on this pause screen descriptions for Sphere Doomers EX, it says that they had a different form before being turned into Sphere Doomers, so that means, in the realms of this theory, Doomers would have had to have been originally Voids before being turned to Doomers over time. And what I believe would cause these Voids to become Doomers is that the energy it gathered while it was in the Jamba Heart was taken away from it. That would explain why, unlike Voids, Doomers are constantly hunting for energy. Now exactly who or what took the energy that was gathered by Void away from it? Well, I have a feeling it was most likely the Ancients. The Ancients are known to have not only studied the Void that was in the Jamba Heart that they had in possession, but other Voids across the galaxy. So what I believe is that the Ancients managed to obtain a Void who already had a physical form, then used the energy from it to construct ancient artifacts that have a similarity to Void's powers and properties. like the Master Crown. And once the ancients removed that void's energy, they left it as an empty shell of its former self, starving for energy to gather so it could be whole again. This monster being known as Grand Doomer. As for the other Doomers, I believe they weren't actually voids, but instead similar to that of the mini-voids that Void Soul summons. That would explain why Grand Doomer is known as the boss of all Doomers, because it's their creator. Perhaps this could explain why Grand Doomer had the Master Crown in Margalor's epilogue. It sensed it or another void's power within it, so they tried to absorb it, hoping it could obtain the energy from it and become whole once again. But unfortunately, they just became a puppet to the crown itself. And with that concludes my little theory on Doomers. If you enjoyed this video, then consider liking it and sharing it with a friend. You should also consider subscribing so you can get notified when I inevitably make another video on Kirby lore. And if you have any other interpretations on what the original form for the Doomers are, feel free to comment them below. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm currently being slowly sucked into a black hole, and I gotta find a way to stop this from happening so I don't get spaghettified. So bye!